Hello everybody, welcome. My name's Iona, I work in the business support team at Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service, and I've got with me Karen. She's my trusty colleague. Karen, do you want to say hello?
Hello, my name's Karen Kirk. I'm the Fire Safety Inspector and I cover north of the county of Nottingham. Hello.
Karen will be helping me out by looking at some of the questions that you're writing in the comments at the end. We've never done one of these before, so please bear with us if we have any technical issues or anything. But today we're going to be looking at managing fire safety in businesses during COVID-19. We're aware that a lot has changed during this time and continues to change. After Boris's announcement on Sunday, it might be changing quicker than we thought, but hopefully this will be standard stuff that will carry you through each season. So don't forget, you can still submit questions in the comments box below, and we'll go through them at the end if we haven't covered them already in the session. And if we don't know the answer, please email us at fireprotection@not-fire.gov.uk, and we'll do some digging and get back to you. So let's have a look at what we'll be covering. We've got protecting your business while it's empty, requirements for testing and maintenance of fire safety equipment, dealing with either a surge in demand or a lot of staff off sick, the status of legal notices, buildings that have changed use during COVID-19, how we're working differently as a fire and rescue service, what you need to consider when you reopen, and where to find advice online. Let's begin. So, protecting your business while it's empty. When a building is empty, the biggest worry from a fire safety perspective is arson. It can become a target for opportunistic crime, which can mean that you lose stock, income, and have costly damage. This is firefighter Molly here, and she's showing us how easy it is to start a bin fire. So these are more common than you might think. So the best deterrents for opportunistic crime is to ensure your building is secure and have good housekeeping. You can report any accumulated or abandoned rubbish to your local council, who will take it away before it becomes a source of fuel. You might not have much control over people dumping rubbish outside your premises, but you need to think about what you can control. Make sure you've included arson prevention measures in your fire risk assessment. Think of ways in which someone could start a fire inside or outside your property and act on any issues you find. This might be your bin storage area being too close to the building, or keeping your bin locked if it's accessible by the public. Secondly, be proactive. Protect your commercial property. Seek advice on security, good lighting, and CCTV will often act as a deterrent to the criminal. To support a prosecution, the CCTV footage does need to be 4 megapixels and 1080p res. You might also consider what happens when the last person leaves the building. Ensure you have thorough closing down procedures in place. For instance, make sure external doors are locked and internal doors are closed. If a fire does occur, closed doors will help stop the fire spreading, limiting damage. Ensuring close down duties are documented and assigned correctly will mean your premises will be secure. You'll know no unauthorised people are left on the premises and alarms are switched on. If you share an escape route with a building that is still operating during lockdown, your security might be compromised, so make sure you check your way leave agreements and make sure you know who's in charge of what. You don't want to be locking gates that will block their escape routes, but you don't want to be leaving it unlocked having not had that conversation with your neighbours first. This applies to businesses and residential buildings. You might also want to consider linking your premises to an alarm receiving centre during lockdown. They will call the fire service on your behalf if your fire alarm activates. Antisocial behaviour and vandalism can also be linked to arson. Report any concerning behaviour through your neighbourhood policing team, neighbourhood watch team, or call the police control room on their non-emergency number 101. You can also report anonymously through Crime Stoppers on the number on the screen, 0800 555 111. In the same way your fire exits might be shared with neighbours, your alarm system may also be linked with other premises. If any area the alarm system serves is still occupied and operating, you still need to carry out testing and maintenance as normal. If, for example, there was a fire in a shop downstairs which was closed, it would affect the residents in the flat above. So any fire safety equipment should continue to be maintained as normal, based on the risks you identify in your fire risk assessment. You might only have part of your premises which has been closed, but the majority remains open, and you might be tempted not to test this part of the system. But it's important to maintain all of it, as a fire developing in a remote area undetected will eventually affect the whole building. If you have any faults or issues with your fire safety equipment, fire engineers are being classed as key workers and can be called out to help maintain safety systems. If there are elements outside your control, make sure any additional risk presented is documented in your fire risk assessment and control measures have been put in place so that at your next audit you can justify your actions. You've kept the premises and your employees safe, and you can explain why, for example, your extinguishers weren't serviced at their annual inspection date. And then, once lockdown is lifted, get these overdue items booked in as soon as you can. So changing in business. With a business that is still open during lockdown, it's likely that businesses will look a little different. You might have had a surge in demand, and a number of things might happen that heighten the risk in the premises, from extra storage of stock or PPE to extra staffing like in the supermarkets. Or you might experience the opposite, with higher numbers of staff off sick or self-isolating. However, the legislation still applies. The Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order says it's the duty of the responsible person to ensure risk from fire is identified and suitable measures implemented, and these should all be recorded in your fire risk assessment. Significant changes might include higher quantities of stock being on site than would normally be the case. This might be storage from more frequent deliveries or extra PPE in care homes. Whatever the items, you need to ensure that this doesn't compromise escape routes. The fire risk assessment should determine the level of risk resulting from the changes and record any mitigation measures. This is especially true when it comes to storage of large quantities of alcohol hand sanitizer. This can be highly flammable, and the location of the storage needs careful consideration, aka don't store it near a heat source. And the government still promote soap and water as the most effective way to combat the spread of the virus. Where staff numbers have been increased, you must continue to provide appropriate staff training. This is sometimes overlooked where employees of the same company go to work at a different site, or when you take on temporary, seasonal employees. This will be the case for a lot of supermarkets, warehouses, and cleaning staff. The responsible person should be able to show that all personnel are aware of what to do in the case of a fire. You should also test their emergency procedures, especially after large staff increases, in the form of regular fire drills. Reductions in staff due to sickness and self-isolation is also to be expected. This presents extra risks, so your fire risk assessment should reflect that. For example, are there enough competent people to take over important duties? You might find you have insufficient staff available to carry out processes safely, which increases the risk of fire. Or you might not be able to successfully carry out evacuations and emergency procedures such as in-house fire response or fire warden duties. The chain of command and nominated competent people must have contingency plans, and robust staff training will ensure all members of staff have the minimum level of training required to evacuate the building and safely call the fire service. If in doubt, get out and stay out. When you're practicing a fire drill, you might want to consider how to maintain social distancing at the assembling point. It might be that you have one point for those who are shielding and another for those who are known to be infected, but this is down to your assessment for your particular premises. A residential building will have a different set of occupants to a shop, but in both situations, it might still be necessary to do a head count. So do what's best for you and record any variations in your fire risk assessment. But bear in mind you need to prioritise these risks. In the event of a fire, the danger in that moment may outweigh the danger of coming into contact with others. That's something you need to decide for your premises and make sure any occupants are aware of the changes to the plan. You might also be worried about vulnerable people, employees or building occupants, so make sure you're continuing to do personal emergency evacuation plans, or PEEPs, for people who you're aware need a little more help evacuating the building. This is particularly crucial in the care industry, where residents might rely on staff to help get them out. In any case, procedures should be reviewed so they accurately reflect the staff available. The status of legal notices. There's not much to say about this one because nothing's changed. These notices are still valid. The current situation with COVID-19 has not changed the status of any notices issued. If you have any specific questions, you should contact the issuing officer named on the notice if you require further advice and guidance. Buildings that have changed their use during coronavirus. In this slide, we'll cover two categories of change of use. One is premises such as warehouses, which have converted to other uses during the pandemic, such as making or storing supplies. This can add risk if the work processes change, and it's unlikely the fire safety will have been a primary consideration. A review of your fire risk assessment should be carried out to assess the new level of risk related to numbers of staff present, materials that are being used, and the type of work being carried out. But it's important that if you do make any alterations to the building itself, you make any necessary applications to meet the requirements of building regulations. Some other premises, such as hotels, hostels and B&Bs, have been repurposed as temporary care facilities. This is more specialist, and the National Fire Chiefs Council have released specific guidance for this one, available online, which we have a link to on our website. The main considerations needed are to the evacuation plan, staffing levels and compensatory measures for buildings which were not previously set up for this purpose and so have a lack of fire protection arrangements. They may also be storing, for example, a large amount of oxygen, which needs special consideration regarding its storage and ventilation systems available when in use, to ensure there's not a high percentage of oxygen in the air. We are also having to adapt to the way we work as a fire and rescue service. Our department made the decision to cancel all routine inspections based on the advice from the National Fire Chiefs Council, and we're now focusing on life risk and working remotely where possible. Fire safety inspectors are all still allocated building control consultations and licensing applications remotely, and as we usually respond to these via email, this work continues as normal. We're able to remotely monitor the fire protection inbox as well as answer business inquiries over the phone. Sometimes we're informed of a fire safety concern which poses a serious life risk to the occupants of the building, and in those cases, a member of our team will visit the premises in person to give advice or take enforcement action, case dependent. To help us, we've recently launched a new online reporting system, so check that out on our website. But we're also adapting the way we do audits. Karen, do you want to explain?
So, as Iona's currently said, that the fire safety inspectors at Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service are following the guidance from the National Fire Chiefs Council. So what's currently happening is fire safety inspectors at Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue undertake desktop audits on a risk-based approach. And what this does, it helps keeps the attendance from ourselves at the premises to a medium. The emphasis is to provide support to business who may have changed their working practices to meet the needs of the pandemic and to ensure that businesses have appropriate fire safety measures in place. So we do call the responsible person, and what Iona has explained, we will talk through any risks they may have, just like we would in a fire safety audit. But unfortunately, due to our risk-based approach, we have to keep any attendance to a minimum. So that's currently how we are doing the desktop approached audits. Okay, Iona.
Thank you. So we'll move on now to recovery stage. Obviously, with Boris's recent announcement, this is probably on your mind quite a lot. And you can see on the side of the slide our lovely new leaflet titled COVID-19 Returning to Work. This is available to download from our website, and it contains a lot of the main advice we've already covered. When businesses begin to reopen, there will be fire safety measures that have fallen by the wayside. So it's really important that this sort of thing is managed as smoothly as possible, because as soon as there's even one person in the workplace, the legislation applies and fire safety must be managed adequately. It's important to get back into your normal routines quickly. Review your fire risk assessment. Has anything changed? Consider changes to work stock levels, working practices, any alterations to the roles and responsibilities of specific staff or the building itself. Means of escape. This is basic stuff. Do your fire doors still open? Have next door opened up yet? Does that affect your escape route? Walk your escape routes and check they're not cluttered or full of rubbish. Make sure everything is still working. Fire detection and alarm systems, firefighting equipment, emergency lighting, self-closers, all that stuff. This sort of thing is really important for your safety and anyone else in the building, and it needs to be checked as soon as possible. Make sure that anything that isn't working or has become overdue for its normal service is booked in as soon as possible. Renew staff training. Why not start off with refresher training and a fire drill? Get everyone back into the normal rhythm and make sure everyone knows what to do in a fire situation. And lastly, restart weekly routines such as testing and maintenance. If you've missed weeks, keep a record of those missed tests in the logbook and why. Old habits are quickly forgotten, so make sure you get back into it quickly. So we've now got to look at where we can get some further advice online. Firstly, our website. We've got an FAQs document which covers a lot of this information and some links to other resources from the National Fire Chiefs Council. The National Fire Chiefs Council has a website too. That provides a lot of information which is the national standard. This is where we adopt a lot of our approach towards the pandemic, and it's helpful to know we are following national advice. You can see our Contact Us page to speak to a fire safety inspector from your geographical area. But these details are on the screen now, but they're also in the description below. Another helpful place to look is social media. Give our Twitter account a follow. It's @NottsFire_FP, or the main account is @NottsFire. Your local fire stations will have a Facebook account too, so give them a follow and stay up to date with things in your area. This webinar is the first time we've tried it, so if you found it useful, please let us know and we'll do another one. And we're going to move on to questions. Karen, have you been keeping an eye out?
I have indeed, but it seems quite quiet on the question front. Should anybody
covered everything.
I know. So should anybody think of anything that they may need to ask, if they can email us on the there was some contact details on the slide provided. Just give us a call or send us an email, and we will reply as soon as we can.
Yeah, if you send us an email on fireprotection@notts-fire.gov.uk, then we'll get back to you.
I think one of the key messages here is to review your fire risk assessment. So there has been a lot of changes with, the pandemic and what Boris has been saying. So please review your fire risk assessment. Please carry out any fire evacuation drills, because if you've employed new staff, they may not know procedures. Make sure you do an induction with them, and as we've discussed, if you do everything that's within the presentation, then you will comply, because you do need to comply with the legislation during this lockdown period. Yeah, that's it really, Iona. I don't know if you can think of anything.
Yeah, I think it must be that we've covered everything so much no one has any questions. All right, so if you want us to do another one, then please do email us or like it, and this video will be able to watch after we've ended the live stream as well, so we'll be pointing to that on our social medias and the website too, so have a look for it. Yeah, I guess for now it's goodbye.
And thank you everybody for watching this, and I hope you found it useful. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.